Hello, regular Drews.
Hi, everyone.
Welcome to episode 84 of Regular Nancy Drew. Today we are going to be discussing something very exciting, or I should say I was very excited to talk about this. And that's the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew television show. We are going to be covering season 2, episodes 4 and 5, which is a part 1 and part 2 episode called The Mystery of the Hollywood Phantom.
Well, aren't you a regular Nancy Drew?
I learned that from the Nancy Drew detective.
Okay, go.
You think you can follow the clues and solve the case of the missing condiment, Nancy Drew?
Because I've read every Nancy Drew mystery ever written.
Nancy, please tell me you're joking.
Wow, you suck at this Nancy Drew stuff. You should get a new hobby.
My name is Carson Drew, and this is my assistant, Nancy.
Nancy Drew.
It's curtains for you, Miss Drew.
Nancy Drew strikes again.
A regular Nancy Drew.
I am so pissed. I have never been so upset after watching an episode of television. Well, that's not true. Ever since the season finale of Veronica Mars season 4, I have never been so pissed after watching an episode of television.
I'm so furious for Pamela Sue Martin.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
After watching this, I was like, dude, I get it now.
Mm-hmm.
I understand. I mean, like, I understood before, but I didn't have,
We didn't see how bad it was.
Yes. Now that I can see it, now that I can see kind of what the issues were, I'm like, dude, you should have walked sooner.
Mm-hmm.
I can't believe you stuck it out for as long as you did. Because, oh my God, the way that they treat Nancy's character in these 2 episodes of TV is the worst.
Mm-hmm.
The worst.
Our 3 words today are misogyny, misogyny, and misogyny.
So, okay, we're going to obviously get into the summary, but just to kind of give you the framework, these 2 episodes take place in Hollywood, and Nancy is going there for a detectives convention with Frank and Joe. And the whole time, everybody is like, you're a detective? Really? You're a detective? Blah, blah, blah. And every single time somebody says that to her, she equivocates it, and she goes, no, I'm a part-time investigator. And to that, they're like, oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. I put that in my notes. I was like, so is she a detective or not? What is Nancy Drew here? Is her character just some assistant?
Yeah, well, that's how they play it, is that, like, she's not actually a detective. And I just, I understand that it's a show from the 1970s and that there is going to be sexism and misogyny. But the way that they make Nancy's character, like, lay down and take it.
Mm-hmm. And say thank you.
And say thank you and say, oh, no, like, don't worry. Like, you're right, I am just a woman. Is like, I want to tear my hair out. Like, oh my God. And the way that she has to, like, breathily pander to, like, all of these, older, experienced male detectives. Oh my God. Mm-hmm. Oh my God. You don't even understand. Like, the rage I feel inside of me right now is, like, visceral. Like, it's just, ugh.
The Hardy Boys never have to explain their status as detectives.
This is the thing. They're the same age. And they both do the work that they do because of their dads.
Right.
Like, they are exactly the same in all respects, except for the fact that they're boys and she's a girl.
I lost track of the number of times Frank referred to allowing Nancy to do something, or I shouldn't have let her do this, as though he is in charge of her.
Yeah. Yeah, they're not even dating is the thing. They're not even together. And even if they were, that would be unacceptable. But he literally has no relationship to her at all, except I guess they're like loose friends, except not even really, because they act like they've only worked together like the one time before, and like they don't really like, so but it's just the fact that like they're both kind of investigating the same case, and because he's a man, he gets to somehow have control, have responsibility over her. I cannot, my rage knows no bounds.
It would have been one thing if they did that with Fenton and had Fenton be like, oh,
Right.
since your father's not here, I'm looking after you. No,
Right.
it's Frank somehow looking after her and rescuing her, the damsel in distress. Not the detective.
Oh, yeah. I will say, if you are a Francie fan, a Francie shipper, these 2 episodes of television are must watch.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll give you that.
You have to watch them because they do have some excellent sexual tension. There are some great chemistry moments and all of that. But overall, it just made me hate Frank.
Yep.
And hate the entire institution of Hollywood, television, all of it.
Yep.
Made me so mad. So mad. So every single time they put her in these situations where she is always the damsel in distress. She has to get rescued again and again and again and again and again. That's basically the plot of the show. These 2 episodes is that there's a mystery. Nancy is being impulsive and dumb and goes and gets herself into trouble, and then has to be rescued by a string, not just one, but like a string of all these different men, to which she's so grateful towards. And I want to bang on my bike.
Well, and then they have all these jokes between the Hardy Boys where it's like, Joe is teasing Frank because he can tell that Frank has a crush on Nancy, but the way that Frank is talking about it is like that, like kindergarten playground, like I'm going to pull her pigtails and tell her that she's annoying so that she'll know that I like her. And so there's like teasing that way, but then every time like they actually have an interaction, Frank is like rude to Nancy.
So mean.
With the like, I shouldn't have let you go to the lake by yourself. Look at yourself, because she got wet. Oh my gosh. Yeah, how dare she?
She's such a child.
I know. Oh my gosh.
They treat her like a child. So there's we'll talk about this when we get there, I'm sure, but there's a moment where, she like falls into a lake or something, and she comes back and they're like, let's get you out of these wet clothes, Nancy. First of all.
Yeah.
Second of all.
Dream on.
Second of all, it's like, oh my God, like she's a toddler. Like she's a toddler that has like gotten messy and needs to be cleaned. She's an adult woman.
They're there for this convention, and Nancy has like a pretty good theory and wants to go investigate it and wants to look into this and tells Frank, like, let's go. Now's our opportunity to like go prove this. And he calls her exasperating because she doesn't want to go back into the convention to listen to the speeches because he's got it under control. He's going to solve the mystery, but later he has to go to listen to the speeches first. She's exasperating because she wants to go look for clues.
The whole premise of it, too, is the fact that there is this mystery going on and Nancy sees it as this problem and that, like, something is actually happening and no one believes her. Like, they're all like, oh, it's just a prank. People are just pulling pranks. Like, it's no big deal. Like, yeah, that guy's missing, but I'm sure nothing bad's happened. He might just be sick or just off somewhere. Like, everything's fine. You're overreacting. Calm down. You're being so dramatic. And then she turns out to be right. And yet we still have I told you so. None of that. She's just like, oh, yay, thank you for finally helping me.
Right.
Are you kidding me? Are you serious? We don't get any, like, you were right all along, Nancy. There's even I think there's the moment when, like, Frank finally gets on board to like the mystery or whatever. There's no you were right. There was no I should have been listening to you. It's just like, okay, well now let's work together.
Yeah.
No, fuck
I'm
you,
so
dude.
mad.
Like get out of here. Are you serious? Oh my God. Yeah. So if you want to be pissed off, feel free, just go search Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys Mystery of the Hollywood Phantom. But if you are at all a Francie shipper, I do think you should watch, just because they do kiss in this episode. And it's worth it just for that. But
not the most believable lead up to it. And also the kiss is like a gratitude thing as well.
Yeah.
So,
yes. She's thanking him for saving her life.
How about he thanks her for solving the mystery and being right all along? How about that?
Mm-hmm. So there's that. But also I will say that something else that really pissed me off is that, like, Joe has no personality in this.
No, he's just there to be the, like, goofy, lighthearted,
also, like,
teasing Frank.
There are these moments where I don't know what was going on, if this is the, Sean Cassidy thing, or like what the issue was, but a direction, I don't know. But these moments where he would just be so dopey looking, like he just wouldn't, like he would just stare into the camera.
Yeah.
Like a dead fish with no expression on his face. And I'm like, but for like a full 10 seconds, like it was like, what's supposed to be happening right now? There's a moment where he drives up to, he's like following the bad guy in the little Jeep car thing. And he drives up the road and the bad guy like flips the switch on the board or whatever, and something bad is about to happen. But Joe is just, he just pulls the car up there, and he's just sitting in the car just waiting for this bad thing to happen.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking
Or
about.
I guess just listening for the bad, I don't know what he's doing, but he's just sitting there just like his mouth is hanging open, and he just has no expression on his face, and he's just looking around. Like, I'm like, what's happening right now? Isn't he supposed to be investigating something? Like, unreal. Yeah. What else?
I got two just little fun things. Just because we're doing our little adaptations lately, I thought I'd relate this back to a couple different other things here. We absolutely did not intend to do like 2 Hollywood-themed mysteries in a row, but I just think that it was so fun. So thank you to our patrons for choosing this one right after we did the Emma Roberts one, because that also, of course, takes place in Hollywood. But then the second thing, if you want a good detective convention mystery that's not whatever this steaming pile of whatever, the CW show in season 3, they do a whole episode that is pretty similar to this. They go to Detective Con, and then once they get there, they realize that the murderer is like in attendance, and so they have to solve it and figure out who it is at the convention before they are able to like leave or get away or whatever. Much better episode than this, and kind of the same premise. So
I will say I do have to give props to this episode for one thing, though, and that is that I did not know who it was. I had a suspicion of who it was, and I was wrong.
Yeah.
They pulled the wool over my eyes really good. And, maybe that's on me for thinking like, this is just a 70s TV show. I'm sure what they're doing is really formulaic and I can see straight through it, kind of thing. No, I could not. I was wrong.
Excellent.
So, yeah. So props to them for that.
Oh, also, Casey Kasem.
Casey Kasem is in it!
The guest star of all guest stars.
I was like, oh my God.
How do you not love that?
We'll have to talk about this later, too, because this is how they pulled the wool over my eyes. There are so many. This is like, it's very Hollywood metaversey because the big part of this kind of mystery takes place on a studio set. So like they're kind of like coming back and forth to the studio, and we get so many real guest stars like Casey Kasem. Also, let's see, Dennis Weaver, James Wainwright, J.D. Cannon, Clive Revel. All of these people were like big deals at the time. I think Dennis Weaver in particularly, let me find it because I made a note about it. Yeah, so he was famous at the time for a Western TV show called Gunsmoke, where he played a detective. And then later they have in like the second episode, let me find it.
Wait, so did all the guest stars play fictional detectives in other shows?
They did.
That's excellent. I love that. I didn't realize that.
Robert Wagner And he played, at the time, he was famous for a detective show called The Switch, where he played a former con man who turned detective. Yeah. So the very meta.
Yeah. So that's even better.
Meta.
I like that.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's interesting and cool, and especially if you're into the whole 1970s TV star stuff, you're gonna catch a lot of Easter eggs. So interesting for that, but the sexism is just overwhelming.
Yes.
So it's very frustrating to watch. Poor Pamela Sue.
I know.
I mean, my God. Anyway.
3 words?
3 words. Can one be Polaroids? Because...
Of course.
I mean, I know that's just kind of like a plot point, is that the Polaroids is like part of the plot, but like every single scene there's a Polaroid in the scene. I swear to God. Like, my God. Was it a new technology then? Is that why everybody was so obsessed with it or something?
Who knows?
Yeah, it's wild. So Polaroids, I put like Detective Palooza just because there are so many, like almost every single character is a detective, or they're an actor who plays a detective, even though yes, the actors are playing detectives, but also in the show there are characters who are actors who are playing detectives in the show, and also just in real life they play detectives. So it's like detective convention, truly. Like detectives.
And then damsel in distress. It's got to be getting rescued.
Yeah. So Polaroids, detectives, and getting rescued.
Ugh. All right.
Okay.
Poor Pamela Sue.
So one other bone to pick that I have with this episode, this kind of segues into our summary, so I'll just go ahead and say it now, is the teasers that they have at the beginning of these episodes for the episode itself is so long.
Excessive.
It's the longest teaser for an episode of television that I have ever seen in my life. It's like a full 2 minutes, at least. And you're like, 2 minutes doesn't seem like that long, Becky, but let me tell you, when you're watching just cut shots of what happens in the episode, you're like, why am I even watching the rest of it? You're just telling me everything that's going to happen.
Part 2 was even worse. It was 8 minutes on part 2.
Stop.
Yeah, it was 8. I checked 8 minutes until the intro music or whatever started, because they did the clips from the upcoming in this part 2 of the episode, but then they also did clips from part 1, and then they finished that, and I was like, okay, we're done with the previously on now. And then they said, and now scenes from part 1. I'm like, we just saw scenes from part 1, but it was just longer scenes from part 1, and then the intro. Which the intro, I did love the intro on this one.
Yes.
Pretty good.
Is
pretty
it changed?
Good. It did. It changed.
Okay.
Same music, but different visuals.
This is season 2's, right? Yeah. So yeah. So it's the same thing they do kind of in the front, in that they have they're showing different covers. Obviously in these two, and I don't know if it's just these 2 episodes, because obviously this is the first of season 2 that we have covered.
No, but Dracula was also season 2. Yeah,
you're right. But these 2 episodes just show the Hardy Boys. They don't show any Nancy Drew covers in the intro.
They show a couple of her covers, but she's not. Pamela Sue Martin's not in the intro.
Okay. Yeah. But so now they have this grid that shows all these different covers and also scenes. So it's interspersed with these covers and then these live action scenes of both of our actors. And so yeah. It's very cute. It's very cool, and I do definitely like it more than the weird running onto and running off stage, running on stage of season 1. It's a little bit more cohesive, professional looking.
Would have been better if Pamela Sue Martin was included in there.
Yeah.
Because her covers are even tiny. The Hardy Boys ones, they make big, and they have Parker Stevenson and Sean Cassidy actually animated in there, but no.
Well, I'll say too, in the credits they say guest starring Pamela Sue Martin.
Yeah, it's not even in the actual title sequence. It's when the episode actually starts and the credits are running at the bottom of the page.
But I'm
just
sorry,
guest starring.
Is she or is she not a titular character to this TV show?
No, she is. They just won't pay her like one.
It's the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew mysteries.
Guest starring
She's
Nancy Drew.
unbelievable.
Yep.
Unbelievable.
Same amount of credit as Casey Kasem gets for his like 2 scenes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, wild.
And she has
Truly
her own
wild.
standalone episodes this season where the Hardy Boys aren't even in it, and she's still just a guest star then? I'll have to double check that, but I don't like it. I do not blame you one bit, Pamela Sue.
No.
I would have been out of there even faster than what she stuck it out for. So
I would have been out of there and in a Playboy double time. I get it now. I get it.
Yeah. Who could blame
not
her?
not just the leaving for the pay issues, absolutely 100%, but then also I'm going to go do a Playboy cover now. 100% I get it.
Let's go, girl.
Reclaiming the power, finally getting your money, taking their image and being able to control it yourself.
Right. I hope she got paid for that. I hope she got paid well for that. Yeah.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. So we begin episode 4. And the opening shot is of Frank and Joe. They are landing in Los Angeles. They're disembarking from this plane. And just basically immediately shenanigans start to ensue. Literally we are at the airport and things start to happen. We, as the audience, not Frank and Joe, see this man in black gloves, cutting the head off of a picture of Nancy Drew. And then we see Nancy arrive in LA as well. She's also at this airport. This guy, I guess, who just cut her head off this picture, bumps into her and slips this photo into her bag without her seeing. And then she goes to make a phone call to Bess, which we should talk about later because I really love this portrayal of Bess here, even though it's only very brief that we get it.
Yes, why is she only in 0.0001 second of this entire show?
But it's a very good conversation that they have. I like it.
It's great, yeah.
They make small talk, and then Nancy, as she's on the phone with Bess, sees this guy slipping something, which we know is another headless photo, into some other guy's bag. So Nancy drops the phone, literally leaving Bess hanging, to run over and go investigate this. But the guy who left the photo, put the photo in the bag, ends up running off. But so she goes and tries to investigate this bag, which is, by the way, on another guy's shoulder. At the time, it's a shoulder strap bag. So she's literally over there digging in his bag. It's on his shoulder. And he turns around and he's like, "Can I help you? What are you doing?" And she tries to tell him, "No, there was this guy. I swear there was this guy here. And he put something in your bag." And he's like, "Yeah, but you're rummaging through my bag right now." So he thinks that she's made up this scenario because she's maybe trying to steal something from him. And he doesn't believe her. So they're in this, not an argument, but there's clearly they're having a confrontation. Also, I think we should call this guy Cowboy Hat Creep. We learn his name later.
I never learned his name. I don't remember what it was.
Well, then great. We'll call him Cowboy Hat Creep because I think he's a creep, and we can talk about it later too.
We have to have some way to distinguish all of these mustaches, all of these 70s
Seriously.
mustaches and sideburns. It's all identical. It's so
God.
bad.
I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about men's fashion and aesthetics in the 1970s. It is so difficult for me to be able to tell them apart.
Yeah, same.
The only reason I can get this guy is because he wears a cowboy hat most of the time. AKA Cowboy Hat Creep, right?
Yes. Perfect.
So she's having this argument with this guy, and who comes to her rescue but the Hardy Boys. They come over, they pretend to be the junior division of airport police. And Joe takes out his wallet and he flips it open really quick, as if he's showing a badge, but there's no badge there. It's actually really funny. I really like that bit. But it is the first instance of her being rescued. They're able to pull her away, and she remembers she left Bess on the phone, so she runs off. But then Joe and Frank have like this little kind of back and forth where Joe teases Frank about liking Nancy. And Frank says, no, I think she's a great girl, but I'm not interested in her like that. Of course, Joe knows that's not true.
Of course.
And so do we, but that's what he says. Then we see Nancy getting into a cab and heading to a hotel, leaving Frank and Joe on the curb, which is kind of funny. And then Frank overhears her destination when she tells it to Cabby and realizes that they're going to the same place, probably for the same reason, for this detectives convention.
Yay!
Ooh. In the cab, Nancy ends up finding the photo of herself with her head cut off and her bag. And on the back, she sees that someone has written, "No one will shed a tear when you're gone." Yikes. Okay, so already we have like a creepy threat left in her bag for seemingly no reason. And then we see, we cut to a shot of some guy in like a monster mask cutting up more photos, like cutting heads off of more pictures. And then we see one in particular, and it looks like a picture of Fenton Hardy that he's cutting the head off of.
Ah!
And we see on the back, he's typing a message onto the back of it that says, "The best shall also go." Whatever that means.
This was weird to me because some of them he handwrites, some of the messages he does with typewriter, and I was trying to figure out if that was significant or not.
I was like, is that a clue? Is it like, do we have like a copycat situation here? Like, what's going on? But yeah, it doesn't turn out to be that. But it was confusing to me also. I picked up on that too.
Oh, well.
You take it?
Oh, sure. So Nancy gets to her hotel, and we meet a bunch of characters here for this detective convention. There is a very famous detective named Jason Fox, and we learn that he is one of the founding members of this convention. He also knows Fenton Hardy, and then we see Cowboy Hat Creep come up, and he introduces himself as Arlo Weatherly. Don't worry about that. He's still Cowboy Hat Creep. No, I'm kidding. Apparently, he has written some really famous criminology books, and Nancy even makes a point to say that she's read all of his books and everything. Then Cowboy Hat Creep sees Nancy waiting by the elevator and goes to talk to her and basically recognizes her from the airport and is like, "Why did you put this picture in my bag when you were messing with me at the airport?" And he takes a picture out of his pocket, and it's a photo of himself with the head cut off. And Nancy, she sees this photo and she's like, "Oh, yeah, you too, huh? Now you'll finally believe me that it wasn't me messing with you because I also got one." And she takes out her photo and shows it to him. And then the Hardy Boys come over and rescue her again. And she tells them that she can handle this. And I think that she's finally convinced Cowboy Hat Guy that this is legitimate, that she's not the one messing with him. So she takes his picture and she flips it over, looks at the back, and it says, "You'll be next, cowboy." He's finally accepted that Nancy wasn't the one who planted this photo in his bag. So he apologizes to her for suspecting her. But he still kind of believes that this is a practical joke, even if Nancy is not the one playing it. He winks at her and says, "See ya, Slick," and touches her shoulder before leaving. I don't know why this was necessary. He didn't have to grab either of the Hardy Boys before he left. But whatever. Frank also just tries to reassure Nancy that this is a practical joke, and she says that she does not think that this is funny, and she storms out.
Yeah.
We also meet a man named Phil Bronson, who we learn is kind of a rival of this Jason Fox guy. And the assistant manager of the hotel comes up to them and tells them that he has arranged a movie studio tour for everyone that afternoon. And the assistant manager doesn't believe that Nancy is a detective. So this is the first of many times in this show. "Oh, you're a detective? Oh, no. I'm a part-time investigator." "Oh, okay. Well, in that case, we need to get you a badge for the convention."
Because otherwise no one would know.
No one would know.
You need a badge, so.
She's like the only woman there as well, as far as I could tell.
I think she might, aside from the tour guide, I don't know, and Bess, who Nancy speaks to on the phone only.
For a second.
I don't think there is a single other. Oh, okay. There is a female desk clerk, I think, that we see for a couple seconds.
And she has one line, and it's, "I had to step away for a second."
There's no other woman in the entirety of the. Yeah. I don't think there is a woman on camera. You don't see a single woman.
Not even in the background or anything. Ew.
I swear.
Well, Nancy gets her woman badge and her name tag for the convention. And we flash to the Hardy Boys, who are unpacking in their hotel room upstairs, where Joe finds 2 headless pictures of themselves. Frank then comes out of the bathroom in just a towel, by the way.
Oh, Parker Stevenson.
Yes.
Oh my God.
There are a couple scenes where Frank is shirtless and Nancy comes to the door. She's like, hold on, I'm not dressed, and makes Frank turn around while she's getting dressed. Oh my gosh.
This is what I'm saying. If you're a Francie shipper, you gotta watch. It's must watch for just these moments.
Oh, it's so good. So Joe shows Frank the 2 pictures, and he's, getting out of the shower. So he goes to get dried off. But then later they go to the pool, and I guess Fenton, Nancy, and the Hardy Boys are all eating by the pool. And they show Fenton and Nancy the photos that they've just gotten. And they flip the pictures over, and the message on the back, brothers can disappear too. And they recognize the location of the photos as being from the hotel lobby. So the photos obviously were taken yesterday, right when they arrived, right? And Fenton sees this, and he pulls out his own picture and says, oh, look, I got one too, also taken in the lobby just from yesterday. Frank butts heads with Nancy at this point. I guess they get up from the table to leave breakfast or whatever, but he gets annoyed with her. Or no, sorry. She gets annoyed with him that he's not taking it seriously enough. And he says that she is overreacting. I don't know how I would react if I got a photo like this, but I feel like it would not be as well as Nancy is reacting right now. I would be freaking out. This is scary.
Well, especially you think she literally just landed into an airport, and she gets into the cab and finds it. So it's not like someone planted this on her while she was in the airport. And it's just a prank. It's just a prank. Right. I'm sorry, someone put their hands into my things and I didn't notice. That's scary. That's scary.
And was taking pictures of me and has kept
the
head portion.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And she even says, she's only in town for this detective convention because Carson was supposed to be presenting something but couldn't make it. So I guess, is she giving the speech for him? She's filling in for him. That's why she's there. She essentially has his ticket. But she even says, she's like, I've never been to Los Angeles before. I know no one here. There's no one that this could be that would be just playing a practical joke on me.
Right.
It's not like I have a friend or something here that's messing with me. I don't know anybody. This has to be somebody nefarious. Well, anyway, Jason Fox comes over to their table at this point, and he tells them that he also just got one. But he's not worried about it at all. He says, these practical jokers, they do this every single year. In fact, last year there was some thing where in everybody's hotel rooms when they arrived, there was this puzzle box thing, and there was a note that if you didn't solve the puzzle box, you would die. And so it's just somebody every year likes to sabotage the detective convention because they want to mess with detectives, or who knows who these mystery people are. They just want to mess with the convention to try to get detectives to solve it, I guess. So he just assumes that this is another one of those. And he actually theorizes that it's probably Bronson who's leaving the photos. And he says, oh, let's mess with him. Let's try a practical joke on him to get back at him.
Yeah.
It's weird. But then this is where Nancy and Frank get into another little argument. And do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So she kind of tells Frank that she doesn't accept this prank explanation, then she just has a bad feeling about it, that it's serious and not a joke. And Frank says that she has no reason to feel this way, and that there's no evidence that there's anything nefarious about it, and asks her if this is just quote unquote women's intuition. And so this whole argument is about he's like, you're not being logical, and she's like, you are so fucking annoying. And she says, no, it's not women's intuition, it's detectives' intuition actually, and I guess you don't have that. In fact, I guess you don't have any feelings at all, and you wouldn't even be sad if I disappeared. And so she leaves. We have to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
So it's this whole like logic versus like a woman's emotion argument that's really frustrating and triggering to me.
It's not women's intuition. It's women's irrational feelings, which are the same thing, right? Because women do not have any sense.
But like, as if him saying like, is this women's intuition, as if somehow that's a bad thing, right? That's frustrating to me too. But what's most frustrating to me about it is the fact that Nancy's reaction to this, like, we're just supposed to think that the reason why she's getting upset is not because she's being like absolutely just ignored and, you know, run roughshod over by Frank, but because she's upset that he doesn't seem to care about the threat against her. Like, because she has feelings for him.
Right.
So we're not supposed to see it as a sexism thing. We're supposed to see this as like a lover's quarrel.
It's cute that she's upset.
Right.
That he doesn't think that she has any sense.
Yes. Really, she's just upset because he's not showing that he cares about her in this moment. Not that he's not taking her seriously.
It's romantic. And she's being frivolous because all she can think about is her feelings for him.
And Frank is actually right, you know?
Yeah.
Except he's not. And we even learn that later. But we as the audience are supposed to read Frank as being right and Nancy as being irrational and emotional.
What?
Anyway, okay, so that happens. And this is where, this is where you were talking about, this is where Frank says to Joe that he should dump a bucket of water on him if he's ever civil with Nancy ever again. So this whole exchange has frustrated him so much that he tells Joe to not let him be nice to Nancy, not to let him be civil, respectful towards Nancy because she's so irrational and so crazy and such an annoying woman
that she deserves cruelty?
That she doesn't deserve to be spoken to in a civil manner.
My gosh.
By someone who is supposed to be like her friend and co-worker.
Yep.
He's not
and
just
boyfriend,
some rando.
potentially. Yeah.
Right. I mean, my God. You guys, I can't. I'm so mad.
Ned is nowhere in sight. Frank is fully the love interest here, and in this positioned as nothing other than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they have that fight, and then they all go on this studio tour. Nancy ends up sitting with a cowboy hat creep, and he's got like his arm over her in the back of this like tram trolley thing that they're on the studio tour. It's gross, and she just looks all happy about it. And I'm like, I'm sorry, were you not just annoyed with him, Nancy, because he thought that you were putting something in his bag? But like now she's just smiling while he's this old man. He's an old man. I'm sorry. He's got to be at least in his 40s. She is a 19-year-old girl. 18, I don't know how old she's supposed to be right now. And his arm's just over her. She's just happy about it.
Yep.
She's just happy about it. So they're on this tram, which is essentially like an amusement park ride through this studio. There are like a bunch of like different stunts that they take this tram through, like a rock slide. There's like a spinning tunnel. It's like you were talking about like movie magic, right? They're demonstrating that to the people on the tour. And occasionally they'll stop and get off to like tour a building or look at something specifically.
It feels like Lights, Camera, Curses, the dossier game. Yeah.
It does, yes. I was thinking about that too. It's very like theme parky.
Yeah, theme parky movie studio mashup weirdness. But yeah, it's fun.
Yeah. And so after a couple of these stops where they get off and get back on the tram, Nancy finds the cut off head part of Weatherly's photo. And she realizes that he's gone. He didn't get back on the trolley after one of these stops. So she shows this little bit of the photo to the Hardy Boys, and she tells them that she thinks that something has happened to him, and that he didn't have this piece of the photo before, so how did it just get there on his seat? She thinks that someone probably like left it there after they abducted him, right? And of course, she wants to go look for him because she thinks that something bad has happened here. And Frank, very generously, I'm being sarcastic, just offers to go with her because even though he doesn't want to, and even though he thinks that nothing is really happening here, he's doing it to make sure that she doesn't get herself into trouble.
Because, again, she doesn't have the good sense to know better, so.
Even though nothing nefarious is going on, she's a woman, so she could get herself into trouble.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going with her to be her protector.
Nah.
I want to throw my microphone to the ground, you guys. I'm so pissed off. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Nancy and Frank are walking around this movie set when this actor, who is Casey Kasem, starts talking to them. He tells them, like, they shouldn't be here. They explain they're looking for Weatherly. Anyway, they have, like, this whole full-on conversation, which really doesn't amount to anything. Like, this guy is just particularly chatty.
It just feels like an excuse to have, like, a cameo
Yeah.
for them to, like, fangirl over him a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So, he plays, like, an actor character who is, like, trying to, like, break into, like, a bigger stardom. He seems, like, kind of, like, old and washed up-ish.
Mm-hmm.
That's his character he's playing. He's also very, very gregarious and, like, chatty and, like, talk. Even though it kind of even seems like at a certain point, Frank and Nancy kind of want to get away. Like, they're like, this is nice and everything, but, like, we're looking for somebody, like, we gotta go. Eventually they do get away. And so, yeah, it literally doesn't really amount to anything at this point. Meanwhile, Joe and Fenton have noticed that Jason Fox has also disappeared from this tour. He shows up quickly, though, and explains that he spotted an old buddy on set and who showed him an editing room, like gave him a tour of something else. Fishy. Also, we see that Phil Bronson is gone as well, but he said he was going back to the hotel because he wasn't feeling well. Okay, so all of these people are kind of missing AWOL at the same time, which is interesting. Cut to, we see Cowboy Hat Creep being tied up and locked into a cell by someone wearing a cape and a monster mask.
Is this just reused from the Dracula set or the...
I think they say that he's dressed up as Phantom of the Opera?
Yeah. No, they
Like
do
the
say
Phantom?
that, but I don't really see it.
Yeah.
The mask is different.
It's definitely not the Phantom of the Opera mask. So
Yeah.
I don't know why they say that. I know that that's why the title of the episode is Hollywood Phantom, right? He's playing the Phantom as in the
Right.
Phantom of the Opera character. But yeah, it doesn't look like that. It looks like a Frankenstein mask to me,
It
honestly.
does, yeah.
So weird.
Yeah, no, I'm totally joking, but it just looks like one of those monsters from the Party in the Castle from the Meets Dracula episode. Like, did they just reuse their set and their wardrobe?
Probably.
Anyway.
So we see that, and then we see Frank and Nancy still walking around when they get caught by a security guard and are escorted off the property.
And Nancy turns to Frank and apologizes to him for them having been caught.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, oh, it's all right, Nancy. She couldn't have known. This is not her fault any more than it is Frank's.
Yep.
Sorry, that annoyed me.
Yeah. You want to take it?
Sure. So later, everyone is back at the hotel, and Nancy starts telling Frank and Joe that there's still no word on Weatherly, but she shows them that she's found a shooting schedule for something called The House on Bracken Moor, which was shooting at the same studio that they'd been at earlier that day. And Nancy explains to them that it's this famous story where 8 people are all brought together to a spooky house under mysterious circumstances, and then they all receive a photo of themselves as a threat, and then one by one start to disappear. So, I mean, that sounds basically exactly like what's going on here. And Frank is like, oh, whatever, that's just a coincidence. You don't know what you're talking about. And Nancy gets really mad, and she's like, no, it all lines up. Like, all these people are getting a photo of themselves and then disappearing one by one. And also they're shooting the thing that, like, it's the same story. They're shooting it at the place that we were just at today. So it's clearly inspired by this story, is it not? And Frank is just like, no. And he decides this is when he is going to go listen to the convention speaker. And he calls Nancy exasperating for wanting to go, like, look into the set of the Bracken Moor set or whatever. She wants to go check that out instead of going to the speech, and he calls her exasperating. And so she goes anyway without him. So she gets to the building where they're shooting this House on Bracken Moor movie or whatever it's supposed to be. And it's super dark. And we, as the audience, not as Nancy, we see the guy in the monster mask, like, gluing, like, he's just got the top half of each one of these photos, right? That's just the head, and he like cuts out each head and then pastes it onto this painting that's a painting of other people, but he pastes it to where it looks like all of those people are the 8 people from the house on Brackenmore. So Nancy like walks onto the set and she sees it's like exactly the dining room set that she described from the story of like the dinner party or whatever. And then in the room is also the painting. So she sees this, and then the masked man bumps into something and then starts laughing, but it's like this horribly scary maniacal laugh. And so Nancy gets really startled, and it sounds exactly like that. No laugh. Any person would naturally just make that laugh. Yeah. It almost sounded like a sound effect, like somebody had pushed a button and it made that noise. But the bad guy runs away, and so she chases him all the way outside, and he's able to get into some kind of like control room. And so Nancy doesn't see him go into there. So she's still kind of running around set looking for him, but he is able to like watch her on this monitor to see where she's going. Then she sees laying on the ground, there's like this like lake area on the set, and then on the ground, like directly next to the lake, is this photo. It's a new photo of herself, of course, with the head cut off. And so she goes over to it and leans down to grab it and pick it up. And the camera cuts to the masked man in this control room who flips a switch, and it caused this like bridge thing that Nancy is standing on next to the lake. It causes it to like move and like weirdly shift down, so Nancy's like launched forward into the water. So she falls completely underwater, and then he flips another switch, and it causes this animatronic shark in the water to like come up and like chase Nancy. And so she's trying to swim away, and obviously it's not a real shark, but there are mechanics on it that could actually injure her. So of course she's going to try to get away.
I thought she thought it was real.
Oh, did you? Oh, okay.
I thought so. I was like this obviously animatronic shark. She's just like terrified and like screaming and swimming away. I'm like, what the hell?
To be fair, it is moving, and it is like moving its jaws as well. So if your arm like gets caught in that like hinge or whatever, that would legitimately hurt, even if you're not like actually getting bit. It is scary, even though it looks really silly because,
it looks goofy.
Like you said, it's obviously animatronic. But she's able to get out of the pond. But by this point, the masked man has now gotten into a semi-truck and starts driving directly towards her. So she is just like standing there in the middle of this like set street or whatever, just standing there, I guess disoriented from her little dip in the lake, and doesn't notice that this guy is like barreling towards her. And then a man in a cowboy hat on horseback comes out of nowhere and like pulls her up onto the horse with him, and they ride away and rescues her.
This is not cowboy hat creep. This is another man in a cowboy hat. I just want to make that distinction.
Hat. There are a lot of cowboy hats in this show, actually.
There are.
This cowboy hat man turns out to be Dennis Weaver, who is just playing himself in the show. He's very charming. He introduces himself, and he offers her a ride back to her hotel on his horse. She's great, very grateful, thanks him a million times. Mm-hmm. She rides side saddle. She gets on the back of the horse, and they go back to the hotel.
I'm sorry. I was just horrified when I saw him pull Nancy onto the horse, and she sits on it. Side saddle.
Yep. She was wearing a dress, but yeah.
You can't hang on to a horse. She's basically in his lap.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. She's barely sitting on it. He like picks her up by the scruff of her neck like she's a puppy, basically.
I mean, I will say, so Dennis Weaver's character in this is actually nice, and I do think he actually is very kind to her and a gentleman and all of that things. I don't have a problem with Dennis Weaver, and I don't have a problem with this scene in particular, except for Nancy's reaction to it all, which is like this,
you saved me.
like absolutely just fawning over this man.
How can I ever repay you?
Seriously. And this is just one of a string of like those moments. There's one even worse that we get to later that I think upsets me the most, like at the very end of the second episode. It's just gross behavior. It's just gross behavior.
It is.
Anyway.
So they ride back to the hotel, and when they get there, outside they run into Frank and Joe, who they see her and they bring her inside. She starts telling them about everything that's just happened, that she was chasing the bad guy and almost got run down by this truck. And Joe asks her, "Are you sure you weren't chasing a shadow?"
Oh my God! Oh, come at you with these hands, Joe. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me?
She went through this whole ordeal. Could have actually drowned.
Yeah.
Could have actually been like killed by this car almost
Mhm.
hitting her or truck. And he wants to say that none of it was even real?
Are you sure you weren't imagining things, Nancy? Are you sure you weren't just being dramatic?
Are you sure your period didn't make you crazy?
And it didn't just make you just trip and you were clumsy and you fell into the lake? And so you're just embarrassed about it and maybe you don't want to tell us that?
Yeah. And Frank is like, oh, let's go and get you out of these wet clothes. And Nancy's like, I think I can handle that myself. Thank you very much. Yeah. And then doesn't he say something about this point, or is it later of like, oh, I never should have let you go to the lake, or I never should have let you go out by
Maybe.
yourself?
Yeah.
What do you mean let her?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You didn't allow her? You didn't sign her permission slip to go out to the set in the middle of the night?
So frustrating.
Oh, okay. So Frank and Joe go inside and they see that Bronson has just received a photo and he is in the process of showing it to someone else. So Frank goes upstairs to get Nancy and she is changing clothes, but she's not dressed yet. But she opens the door anyway, even though she's not fully dressed, and she invites him into the room.
Oh my God.
Says, oh, turn around because I'm still changing. And so he does turn around and they're talking about Bronson's photo. And he thinks it's still a hoax, but they think that they should go talk to Bronson about it just in case. So she gets dressed and then they go down and they do. But then they go to his room and he's being weird.
Yeah.
And he's like evading their questions and he like doesn't want to show them the photo. And he's like, oh, you don't need to see the photo. And they finally like push him to show it to him. And then he like takes out a normal Polaroid of his son. He's like, is this what you wanted to see so badly? I just carry a photo of my son with me. So what? But then as they leave, he like shuts the door and behind them and smiles like he's like pulled a fast one or something.
It's very weird.
Yeah. And then Nancy gets frustrated because she thinks that Frank and Joe are making fun of her and that they have just like pulled this prank on her and like told her that he'd had one of the photos just to make her look foolish.
Yeah.
Which I would totally believe. I would totally put it past them to do this after everything else that they've done in this episode so far. So then they run into Jason Fox and he is looking for Fenton and he says, you know, we were supposed to go to the next seminar together, but I haven't seen him in like half an hour. And they also can't find Phil Bronson either. And of course they all just like literally just saw him in his room. So where could he have gone? And apparently Fox had just paged him and called his room and had the front desk call his room, but there was no answer. So Joe goes back upstairs to check. And then Frank sees, they're at the front desk of the hotel, and Frank sees behind the desk clerk or whatever, the mailboxes for each room. And he sees Mr. Bronson's mailbox has a photo in it. And so he asks the manager to give it to him, and he does. And it's another headless photo. So Frank asks him, when did this arrive? And they said, oh, it wasn't there earlier when Bronson was there talking to a mail clerk behind the desk. And the assistant manager is like, wait, what mail clerk? We only have a female clerk today. And the woman comes up. She's like, oh, yeah, I had to step away for like just a second. So it must have just been like that brief time. And they like snuck behind, pretended to be a desk clerk, and then put the photo in the mailbox. Meanwhile, though, we see Fenton being tied up in a cell right next to creepy cowboy hat guy.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, maybe we should have taken Nancy seriously because this guy is nuts.
Thank you, Fenton Hardy. Literally the only one who says it in the entire show. This is the only time, too. But he's like, yeah, Nancy was right. We should have listened to Nancy. Maybe we wouldn't be here right now if we had listened to Nancy.
You want to take it from here?
Sure. So Joe goes back upstairs to Bronson's hotel room and he finds the door just like open. And so he goes in and he sees the room has just been like ransacked, destroyed. There's glass broken. Looks like there was probably a struggle. So he runs downstairs to tell everyone. And Fox obviously comes to the conclusion that Bronson must have been kidnapped. Then a desk clerk hands him a package that was left for him at the desk, and he opens it, and inside is Fenton's ring and Arlo Weatherly's watch. And then also there's a medallion that Bronson was literally just wearing like 10 minutes ago. And there's also a note inside this package that says, 3 of your detectives already gone, 500,000 will free them. Don't call the police, details will follow. So this is a ransom demand. And the assistant manager also notices that there is blood on the medallion chain. Yikes. Fox ends up saying that he thinks it's probably just from the broken glass in the room. And Nancy says that they should go ahead and call the police, even though the ransom note tells them not to, and Fox agrees to that. So with this news, the Hardy Boys aren't exactly apologetic, but they do now believe that Nancy was right all along, and so they all cheerfully decide to work together now. And then we see the masked man cutting the head off another picture of Joe, which is kind of weird. I don't know why they end up getting like multiples of these pictures.
Mhm.
Seems kind of extra, and I think it's supposed to like imply to us as like the viewer that like, oh, it's coming, like it's coming for Joe. But it's like, how would the bad guy know that specifically? Like, he's being a little bit opportunistic with how he's kidnapping people.
Right.
So it's like, it doesn't really seem like. Anyway.
Maybe it's a scare tactic of like, oh, here's another one of you in today's clothes, so you know I'm still watching, kind of thing. Maybe it's like, something like that.
Like the Black Cat. Like if you end up getting one note, it's just a warning. But if you get the second one, game over.
That's it. Yep.
Anyway, so Nancy, Frank, and Joe all return to stage 24. This is where the house on Bracken Moor set is. Frank tries to tell Nancy to wait outside while he and Joe go onto the set. And then, of course, they immediately start bickering about this because Nancy's like, no, I'm the one that I had this idea. Like, I'm going in with you. And
why does anyone need to wait?
Joe aptly says, can't you two keep a truce for more than 20 minutes? And so they all go onto the set. Then Nancy shows Frank and Joe the portrait with all their heads pasted onto it. Why is it here? What even is this? Is the masked man trying to live out some kind of fantasy? Did he want them to find this painting? It's very confusing. And when they start throwing around words like insane and psychotic behavior, they hear a laugh in the background. It's that same creepy laugh that Nancy heard earlier. And then they see like the shadow of the masked man and they start to run after him. But Frank tells Nancy that instead of running after this man, that she needs to go back to the hotel to warn Fox. They start to kind of argue about it, but ends up Nancy does go back to the hotel to warn Fox, and Frank continues on after Joe. Joe ends up hopping on like this cart situation, this little car alone to follow the masked man, who is also taken off in a cart. And then, like, Frank is, like, trying to follow after this cart, and he is instantly caught by security. Like, literally, he, like, takes 2 steps, and a security guard comes around the corner and is like, what are you doing? It's very funny. So then Joe is following this guy and ends up losing him, but then he sees a cart parked off onto this road, so he drives his cart up this road, and then we as the audience see this masked man flipping some switches at this control board that we saw him at earlier, and then suddenly this huge rush of water starts coming down this road, so Joe has to like jump out of his cart and abandon it in order to avoid being swept away, which is just kind of like, what kind of set is this?
How do they have the infrastructure for this?
And it also seems like you would put this on a Hollywood set. Like, it just seems dangerous. Anyway, I guess it was the 70s. It could have happened. I don't know. Anyway, so he's just like standing there after this water thing rushes down. This is what I was talking about before with like his blank look. Like, I'm serious. You guys have got to watch it just to see this moment because it's so bizarre. He's just staring blankly, just like off to the side of the road, just waiting for something to happen. I don't know what. And he ends up getting kidnapped by the masked man. And that is the end of episode 4. Do you want to take part 2, Kori?
Okay, so part 2 of the episode, after our 8-minute re-intro and summary of the last episode, we get the scene where Fox is talking to Lieutenant Astor of the LAPD about the kidnappings at the hotel when Nancy runs up to him. She tells them about Frank and Joe chasing the shadowy figure away from the set, so they go with Nancy back to the studio. Meanwhile, Frank is walking around with a couple of guards and the head of security, and he's explaining what they were doing there and all about the man that they were chasing, and he goes to show them the painting that they found on the set. but it's gone. And then Aster, Fox, and Nancy all show up at the set as well. And now, because the painting is gone, the three of them look pretty foolish. And the painting is actually still, like, there is a painting there, but it's not their heads, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's still just like the original painting.
Yeah.
So the security guard and the police officer are really annoyed, and the head of security tells them that they cannot come back here without a pass. But Joe is still missing. And Frank is like, well, we have to come back because we have to figure out what happened to my brother. And so security is like, don't worry, we'll find him. Go back to the hotel. We'll find him. So they get back to the hotel, and Frank is talking about how frustrated he is to Fox. And it seems like no one is really concerned about the missing people. Frank, you weren't concerned about this until like 20 minutes ago. So whatever. There's still no word on Joe, so Frank decides to go back to the studio to look for him, and Nancy tries to go with him, but Frank will not allow her to because somebody has to try to protect her, and I guess he can't do that if he's looking for clues on the set.
I just want to reiterate to everyone that we are supposed to think that this is cute. We are supposed to think that this is sweet, gallant, knightly behavior that Frank is exhibiting, and not controlling, weird overprotectiveness to someone that you have no right to be protective of.
Who is just as capable at solving these mysteries as you are, Frank. So later, Aster, Fox, Nancy, and the assistant manager are all in the assistant manager's office talking, and Fox says that they are going to have to try to raise the funds for this ransom demand, the $50,000 or $500,000. Nancy suggests that they question the hotel staff, and Aster says, oh no, I've already thought about that. And he asks to speak to Fox alone, but Nancy says, hey, no, I'm the one who saw the painting on the set, so I should be included in this conversation. And Aster says that she was imagining things, and it's no wonder because she's just a woman who gets overly excited by all the excitement going on. Oh my gosh. Okay, so she leaves, but in the hallway, she stops to talk to the assistant manager, and he makes some comments about her not trusting the staff. And he's like, oh, well, I run a tight ship around here, so, I would know if anything was going on. And Nancy's like, well, I mean, I'm kind of implying that maybe you do know what's going on. And he's like, are you accusing me? And she's like, no, I'm not accusing anyone yet. We'll see.
I love this scene.
Yeah,
I think
it was
that
good.
This is such a great scene for Nancy in particular because she's clearly very hot off of the heels of that conversation that she just had with Detective Aster. Like, she's just stormed out. And the way that she's able to channel it into this cutting but still cordial, you can tell that she's not she's being calculated. And I love a calculated woman. Anyway.
Oh yeah, it's great. It's nice. You get a good reaction out of him. That tells you a lot right there. Very smart, Nancy. So then she arrives back at the studio, and she walks back onto the set and sees that the painting has been replaced again, and now their faces are back on it this time. She then finds a Polaroid negative on the floor, and it is of Frank. And while she's looking at it, a masked man jumps through a pair of doors and scares her, so she screams and runs, and he starts chasing her.
Oh my God.
But he's blocked the exit, so she has to climb up this scaffolding all the way to the roof, and then she jumps onto this building next to it and is able to get down to the street, and then she runs literally straight into Casey Kasem, and he notices that she seems scared, but she's just like, oh, it's, studios are just creepy at night. That's all it is. And he offers to walk her back to the hotel, but she declines and says, I will get there on my own. You want to take it from here?
Sure. So meanwhile, Frank has arrived back at the studio and wanders into a Charlie's Angels shoot. Literally Kelly Garrett. We get a cameo of Kelly Garrett on the set of this Charlie's Angels shoot.
Oh, hey, another woman with a line. Great.
That's true. Kelly Garrett's in it, but she's not credited, by the way. No. So I didn't know this was going to happen until we're in it. And I'm like, oh my God, that's Kelly Garrett. Anyway, she ends up kissing Frank on the mouth, thinking that he's her co-star. They set up the scene, oh, hey, your co-star is going to walk around the hallway. I need you to turn around and grab him and kiss him. And also there's this weird exchange between her and the director where they talk about her always landing her kisses or something. It's gross and creepy as well. But anyway, so she grabs Frank and kisses him on the mouth, and Frank says, any other time, I'd discuss spending the rest of my life with you, but I'm in a hurry. And so he has to. I did think that was funny.
It was good, yeah.
So then he leaves, that said, and starts walking down the street, and someone starts following him in a car. It ends up being security, and he is caught again. Oh my God. We gotta talk about this later, because this is kind of extra. Cut to Joe. Joe is finally waking up, I guess, after being knocked out by masked man dude. He's able to like make it out of the room that he's in by like shimmying himself over to the door and like being able to like get the door open. He's still tied up the whole time. And then we see Nancy back at the hotel, and we see her running into Fox and Lieutenant Astor. And Astor tells her she needs to not leave the hotel first again, because she was just at the studio, without notifying them first.
Why?
It's not because she's a suspect. They're worried about her, Kori. She's not safe out there alone because she's a woman.
Frank and Joe are allowed to run around by themselves.
This is what I'm saying. Like, I know that kidnappings are going on, and it is not safe, probably, to be by yourself when people are dropping like flies like this. But they don't say that shit to anybody else. They just say it to Nancy.
Never mind that the men are the ones that getting kidnapped.
Yes! Anyway, so she tells them, F you and F that. She doesn't say that. I wish she had said that. But basically, she says no. Or no, sorry, no. She tells them, she doesn't say no. I wish she said no. But instead, she just tells them that actually she was just at the studio and she found the painting again and that negative of the picture of Frank. Then we see back at the studio, Joe is rolling himself down the street because he's still tied up. So he's like rolling himself across the street to get away, which is hilarious. And he's able to like make it over to this prop that he's kind of able to use to like get his bindings off of him. And he hides under it as this car pulls up. Turns out it's a security guard with the masked man. Oh, twist! I was so shocked by this. They got me. I did not see this coming. Yeah. So I guess this particular security guard is in on it with the masked man. And the masked man tells this security guard that he has Joe tied up in this building. Of course, that's what he thinks. Joe is actually currently under this prop. I think it's like a cannon or something that he's hiding under. And he's able to peep the license plate of this car that they drove up in and scratches it into the side of the prop to be able to like write it down and remember it. Woo! This is what I'm talking about.
Very smart, yeah.
But then, to my absolute bafflement, he decides while these men are in this building, I guess trying to go where they think he is tied up, he climbs into the trunk of their car.
Is this smart, or is this the like riskiest thing that you could do?
I mean, I guess at this point he's no longer tied up, so he's got the element of surprise or whatever. But there's two of them and one of him. Like,
he's getting a free ride back to the hotel without even them knowing, I guess.
Some risky business, man.
Oh yeah.
Well, it doesn't pay off either. We'll learn later. No. So. Anyway. Meanwhile, back at the hotel, Nancy is looking at the Polaroid negative that she found on set under a microscope, and she finds stage makeup kind of smeared on the side of it, along with a fingerprint. Hey, yo, we are finally getting down to some real detective work. So she gives this fingerprint to the police so that they can try to find a match. Then the assistant manager comes in with an envelope that's addressed to Nancy, and inside is a typed note that says that she and only she should deliver the ransom to the studio at 10 o'clock the next day. Astor tells Nancy that they won't let her do that. They're going to send a decoy police woman to pose as her, to pose in her place, so that Nancy isn't in any danger. But of course, Nancy doesn't like that plan. She's like, I'm a detective the same as any of you. Like, I can do this. Let me do this. Of course, they say no. And then Aster gets a call that Frank was picked up by at the studio by security and brought to the main gates. And we learn that Joe still has not been found.
Can the Hardy Boys do anything besides get picked up by random other men? Joe's getting kidnapped. Frank keeps getting detained by police. Nancy's the only one making any progress here on solving this thing.
Seriously. You take it?
Sure. So, of course, Frank has snuck back into the studio by this point and finds Joe's scratched license plate message. So, thank you very much, Joe, for that. But then elsewhere on the lot, Joe is sneaking out of the bad guy's trunk, and he goes inside of a building and finds all the other abductees in a cell, like in this like fake jailhouse on this set or whatever. And Fenton is like, hey, Joe, look out. But it's too late. The masked man is right behind him, grabs him, and throws him in the cell as well. Back at the hotel, Nancy's in her room and is snuck up on by Frank. I didn't really like this shot. It's just Nancy like standing there looking out the window at her hotel room, and then we see just the shoes of somebody sneaking up on her, but it's just Frank. And he's like, why is your door unlocked? And she's like, oh, it's broken. I already called maintenance.
Yeah. He tells her she deserves to be scared for leaving her door unlocked. She's like, it's broken, you absolute tool.
Yeah.
Sorry, she didn't say that. I said that. But
she should have said that. But she says that she's been so worried about him. And he's like, oh, you have been? And it's supposed to really be really sweet. But he comes off as like almost sarcastic. I don't know. But then he tells Nancy that he was not able to find Joe, but he does think that he knows who the kidnapper is. He thinks that it's the security guard who keeps throwing them off of the lot. Pretty good cover for your crimes, I guess. He has told the police this, and he did give them the license plate number that Joe had left for him. And apparently the security guard has only been working here for like 6 months, so it makes sense that it's this guy. The police told Frank about this new ransom note, and Nancy tells him that she is going to be the one to deliver the note. And he's like, oh, I wish you wouldn't. So okay, sweet, I guess.
No, listen, I mean, like, it's annoying. It's definitely annoying by this point, but this scene is so fraught with sexual tension.
It is,
like, you could cut it with a knife. Like, it is like mandatory viewing for Francie shippers is this particular scene. So, yeah.
We flash to the next morning, though, and Nancy receives a note that she shows to the police detective. She says that it was, like, under her door that morning, and it says, a policewoman will not do. I want you, Nancy. So Aster, the police lieutenant, agrees to let her go, provided that she wears a wire so that they can, like, hear what's going on. And Fox says that he wants to go, too, and Frank says that he's also going, and then, of course, Aster lets them go without any big like fuss from them because it's fine for them to go, just not Nancy. But then back at the studio, we get on another bus tour again, and because they're like the money exchange is going to take place on this tour while they're somehow like on this bus or whatever. So she's sitting with Fox on the bus, and Frank is waiting with Aster in a car, and they're wondering how they're gonna like exactly make contact with the money exchange or whatever with the kidnapper. But then we flash to the hostages. They're all still locked up in this cell. And Joe is like, why, if this is just a movie set, why is the cell so sturdy? Why can't we just break out? Luckily, though, he has a lock-picking kit in his shoe, or like a file thing that he uses to like pick the lock, essentially. Let's see here. So then Nancy and Fox we flash back to the tram. They're being driven through this prop warehouse, and then the door shuts behind them and the studio gets all dark, and Nancy is abducted by the masked man. And then Fox notices she's missing, and he stops the tram, but Nancy is already being escorted away by the security guard and this masked phantom man. Do you want to take it from here?
Sure. So then we get kind of like a really quick little snippet of a shot that it doesn't really amount to much, but I had to put it in here because it's so freaking funny.
Oh, it's great.
Joe ends up being able to pick the lock on this cell, and Fenton just says, I never taught you how to do that. So funny.
Aw.
Anyway, then we see Nancy being shoved into a car by this masked man and a security guard. Joe, who is just able to break out of his cell, sees that she's being put into this car, and he runs to security to alert them. And security ends up calling the police, and then this car chase ensues. Eventually, they're able to cut this car off, and the masked man tries to run off with Nancy, but Frank leaps over the hood of this police car and tackles him to the ground. Classic Frank Hardy moment.
Yes.
Love it so much. He unmasks this man, and it is none other than Casey Kasem.
I mean, they had to do it, did they not?
What a Scooby-Doo callback. The meta of this, oh my God.
Literally unmasking the villain.
And it's Casey Kasem.
And it's Casey Kasem.
If you guys don't know, voices Shaggy in Scooby-Doo, where they frequently, every single episode, unmask a villain. It's very meta.
I love it. I love it.
It frustrated me so much because I did not think it was Casey Kasem, because they had so many of these little cameos from different people. I just assumed it was just something like that. And the assistant manager was being so freaking creepy and so obviously coded as being this villain who hates these detectives who come to his this convention at his hotel every year. He hates having to deal with them. I thought for so sure it was him. There was even a moment where we hear the masked man talk to the security guard, and I was like, how that kind of sounds like Casey Kasem, but I was like, but there's no way it's actually him.
That's what I thought too. It's they wouldn't do that, would they? Would they make it that obvious? Would they do that? No, it's got to be some other misdirect.
The thing is that Casey Kasem has such a distinctive voice. Literally, that's what he's known for. Being an actor and a radio host. And anyway, we could talk about our love of Casey Kasem forever. I think we do talk about him in
the Scooby-Doo episode, yeah.
Scoop Sesh episode, yeah. We have a Scoop Sesh Scooby-Doo episode over the Haunted Showboat. And we talk all about Casey Kasem because he's actually really a very, very cool guy. Or was a really cool guy.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Casey Kasem. Yeah, but so we love Casey Kasem. But I was just so pissed. I was like, wait a second. I thought it sounded like him. Why didn't I put it together that it could have been him? Oh, so pissed. Anyway.
They should have not had him talk at all. Because it was just, for most of it was just the gloves and the mask, and that's all you saw. We shouldn't have heard his voice because it's too iconic. It's too recognizable.
Oh, so he ends up trying to run again, get up and run after being tackled by Frank. But then he gets punched out by Robert Wagner, who just happens to be nearby at this time. And he says, oh, I'm so happy to have been able to help stop this man from escaping, especially when a beautiful woman is involved. And Nancy breathily asks him, how can I ever repay you? And he says, well, think of something. Sick.
No. She's 18. Go away.
Disgusting.
Leave her alone.
Cowboy creeps. Why are these two episodes so full of creepy men?
This was not necessary at all.
Stop hating on this girl. My God.
She is not here to be a decoration for your convention.
She was just kidnapped. You guys give her a fucking break. She was literally just being shoved into a car by these men. And you're like, don't worry, you can repay me with a sexual favor.
Ugh.
Yeah.
She was the one that solved all of this from the beginning. She had this covered, but he's the one that helps.
Yes. And Frank even is peeved at this interaction because she's not being grateful towards him.
He's the one that deserves sexual favors.
The one who deserves Nancy's sex for rescuing her. He's the one who jumped over the car, so she should be saying that to him.
Despite gaslighting her the whole episode.
Oh my God. And being just incredibly mean. In and of itself, being incredibly mean and then being surprised when she's not grateful that you begrudgingly offer your help.
Mm-hmm. Because your father and brother are missing. She's helping you.
Yes.
It's not Carson tied up in that cell.
Oh my God, you guys. So, yeah. Lieutenant Astor says to Frank that he guessed that this wraps everything up, but Frank says not quite. Then we cut to Frank, Joe, and Nancy back at the hotel to confront none other than Jason Fox. They say they know that the security guard and the actor were being like controlled by Fox because he was the only one who would know about who was attending the convention. He was the only one who'd be able to like plan all of this. Also, I guess the security guard changed cars this morning, and only someone who was working on the case, like inside, would know that they had his license plate number and that he would need to change cars. The kidnapper even knew that they were going to sub a policewoman in for Nancy, and that's why they got that second note, right? Funnily enough, I kind of thought, I had a sneaking suspicion that Nancy wrote that note herself. Because we didn't see it get delivered to her. I was like, what do you want to bet? She wrote that herself because she's sick of this? And it's like, no, the kidnapper demands it. I mean, what are you going to do? But no, actually.
I wouldn't blame her.
But because the kidnapper knew this, he then sent the note so that he wouldn't have been known to send that note if he didn't know that they were going to do that. And literally only the assistant manager, Nancy, Astor, and Fox were in the room at the time when they talked about doing that. So it had to be one of them. And then the final nail in his coffin is when Joe came downstairs after Bronson's room was ransacked and they get the gold medallion with the blood on it. Fox said that the blood must be from the broken glass in the room, but Joe never mentioned any broken glass being in the room. So Fox must have known what the room looked like because he was there.
Got him.
And they say, if we check your bank account, we will undoubtedly find out that you were deeply in debt, and that is why you plotted all of this to get this ransom money. And also, they have that fingerprint from the medallion, and so they're going to match that to the fingerprint that they found on the Polaroid negative, and so that'll be their, hard evidence or whatever. And he's like, oh, great job, you guys, you got me, but I'm out of here. So he tries to leave, and he is blocked by the police and arrested.
Excellent.
Later, they're like all downstairs and they're kind of chatting or whatever. And Nancy takes Frank aside and thanks him for saving her life and kisses him. It's breathy and kind of gross, and annoying, but it's a fancy kiss, And so like beggars can't be choosers. I don't know.
I'll take it, I guess.
Yeah, I'll take what I can get. Whatever wish fulfillment I can get at this point. And then after they finish kissing, they can't really have an extended moment because Joe, our perennial third wheel, pops up and interrupts their cute moment. And that is the end. Case closed.
Thank goodness.
Yeah. I was so excited. I was so ready, Kori. I was so ready for some proper Francie development. And we did get Francie development, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's just ruined. Ruined by sexism.
The premise is great. Nancy and the Hardy Boys at a detective convention figuring out who is making all the detectives disappear. That is a great concept. In practice, it's obscene.
Yeah.
They're so cruel to her.
Yeah. It's so disappointing because ultimately, it could be so good. It could be so good. And truly, the only thing that ruins it is the sexism. Like, and it's so clearly from the people who created the show, like the writers, the showrunners, like that's who engineered this.
They're boxing Nancy out.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're giving her all these awful, all these awful scenes, just treating her poorly.
I can only imagine, like, if this is what we are seeing, what are we not seeing? Like, I can only imagine the extent of, like, the campaign to get Pamela Sue Martin out of there. Like, because what we're seeing, like, I mean, obviously we've heard, the rumors or whatever of, like, and know about her in Equal Pay and the rumors of like her feeling like she was not really welcome, anymore. But like we are watching on screen like what I consider to be like it feels like a character attack, a way to like actually like diminish Nancy Drew as a character in order to diminish Pamela Sue Martin's role. You know what I mean?
It felt like they had already decided to have just a Hardy Boys show, and they're like, how do we damage her character so much that we have an excuse later on to do away with her entirely?
Character assassination. That's that's the term I was searching for. It feels like a character assassination.
Harriet Stratomeyer Adams, where were you?
Where were
Pamela Sue needed you during this time. Goodness. How could we let this happen to Nancy? Season 1 was so great. I don't feel like we had. I mean, Nancy, she still faces sexism because that's just the nature.
But she faces it and she triumphs. She triumphs, Kori. That's the whole point.
It's never like this in the first season.
Mm-hmm. No.
None of this. Oh, thank you so much. I'm just a helpless woman. I need saving. And
well, yeah. The thing that pisses me off so bad about it is because it's attacking her credibility and her integrity as a detective and an actual person.
As a part-time investigator, not a detective.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So we're just treating Nancy Drew, like literally like Nancy Drew, who has like such a long history of being like the perennial like detective. And even in your own freaking show, like you set this up and now you're like taking her down a notch, being like, no, she's not actually good. She's really just kind of like this annoying, impulsive, stupid character who has to rely on the men in her life to save her. And of course, for which she is going to be grateful.
The the Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew Meet Dracula episode was only 2 episodes ago. How did we get here? I don't feel like it was that bad.
Yeah.
In that one. And season 1 certainly wasn't like this at all. How did we get here so quickly? From how great it was, and then we have them meet for the first time, and then all of a sudden she's relegated to supporting character who's just there to be the token girl.
I mean, yeah. I think that there is an audience for this show who wouldn't notice the sexism. And so I think that, like, obviously for us as we watch it, we're like, this is egregious. Like, how could you write this and not know what it is that you're doing? But I mean, like, I don't know. I don't spend a whole lot of time watching other 70s movies and TV shows. I don't really have a whole lot to compare it to, but I can imagine the other sexism that is,
of course,
visible in those. And so I'm sure that to people at the time, this was just normal, a normal episode of TV. And that the way Nancy's character is written and treated is no different than any other, the treatment than any other female character gets in any other TV show. So it's just, yeah. But looking at it now, watching it now as someone who's living in 2024, it's like, wow, what a marked difference from how they showed her previously. You know? Ugh.
I mean, thank goodness we're no longer in a case where this is the norm.
Yeah.
But it makes it really hard to watch, even knowing that, like, it was more acceptable back then. Oh my gosh, the things that women had to go through every second of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just, like, the thing that kills me about it is what I was saying before, and I don't know why I want to, like, harp on this so badly. I want to get this point across so badly, is that, like, it feels like when you're watching it, to those, it could have felt like when you were watching it is just like, this is just how women are treated, but it feels so calculated to me. And I think something that I think that is still, even to this day, people don't really consider a whole lot when you think about, like, sexism and misogyny, is that casual sexism and casual misogyny is calculated.
Oh yeah.
Like, when, you know, when you get comments or, like, all of these different, you know, things that men say to women, because when men say these kinds of things to women today, even still, it's intended to take women down a notch. right?
Oh, yeah.
And even if it's not like conscious, right? Like sometimes like sexism is deeply ingrained in people. They're unaware they're being sexist, right? The intention behind it is to maintain the status quo, is to make sure women know their place, right? Which is subjugated, relegated underneath men, right? And so this whole thing of like, oh, you are so strong for a woman, right? Like, it's like, oh, you think, oh, that's a compliment, right? But really what it is you're telling me that you think that women in general aren't usually able to be as strong as men. And so it's the way that I can see like the ripple effects of this of like thinking about how this is just an episode of TV, right? Like it's not going to change the world or anything, but thinking about Pamela Sue Martin and her experience with this show and how she had to get out.
And how it impacted her career,
how it impacted just the cultural conception of Nancy Drew. Like, I think about the references that we get. The whole reason we made this podcast is because of the snide way that people talk about Nancy Drew in public, in pop culture. Like, oh, aren't you just a regular Nancy Drew? Did that come from this? Did that come from this shift in how these writers decided to show Nancy Drew so that we as an identity can make sure that Nancy Drew isn't getting too big for her britches, that she is not above the Hardy Boys, that all women need to stay in their lane.
She's also not equal to the Hardy Boys either, because that would effectually put her higher than them because they have to have something over her.
So,
of
like,
course it's calculated.
This whole show that we've written, we need to make sure that we're stepping that back because we didn't intend for people to believe that women could be equal to men.
No.
Right. This is what I'm saying. It's like it's all this deep, it's inside of us, this kind of thing. And thinking about how we got here, how you and I got here on this podcast is probably because of this episode of TV. My mind's exploding.
Well, and yeah, it's just a TV show. It's just an episode. It's just for fun. But of course it's calculated. It has to be. That's how misogyny is so successful in keeping women in their place, especially for so long. It all has to be intentional. You just chip away little by little, and that's how it's so successful.
It's exactly what it is. It's a chipping away. Anyway, yeah. Is there anything else we want to note?
It's just disappointing. That's all. What?
Oh, well, I was just going to say, talk about the security on this set.
Oh.
How bad is this freaking studio security? Because, oh my God, like they will escort them off the set and they just turn around and walk right back on. I mean, I know it's the 70s, so probably there aren't really good cameras or anything like that, but like, oh my God.
Well, the security guard apparently was involved, so maybe he's just too busy playing Phantom to effectively kick Frank Hardy off the lot.
Well, and it's just like, are we not getting the police involved? Are we not citing these people with trespassing? We're just like, you're out of here.
No.
Oh, caught you again. You're out of here again. Caught you again. You're out of here. Like, my God. It just seemed to be happening way too often as just a way to just get them off the set.
Yeah.
For no reason. Like, just no good reason.
Interrupt the story.
Yeah. Or make Frank have to go back to the hotel so he can talk to Nancy. Oh, I just thought that was wild.
That's funny. Oh my gosh.
Let's see. I will say I do like the spooky studio vibes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I think they do a really good job, especially when Nancy is, like, first there. It's, like, nighttime, and she's wearing that beautiful blue dress and sensible heels. And it's just so dark and spooky. And, like, the idea of being, like, chased on a film set by, like, a masked, like, phantom character. That's iconic.
Yes.
That's like peak horror suspense movie stuff. And they do it really well. Even though the animatronic shark is goofy, it's very funny and effective.
Yeah.
And it's like kind of horrifying.
Yeah.
So, that. But it is just all spoiled. It's just all spoiled by this sexism plot. And I don't know, maybe if you're a dude, it doesn't really bother you that much. I don't know. I hope it does. But if you can watch it and enjoy it, I guess good for you.
Yeah. Oh, you want to just talk about Bess? Her one line that she gets.
A little bit. I just loved the representation of her so much because she works in a shoe store.
I know. It's cute.
I was like, oh my God, what a perfect place for Bess Marvin to work.
Mm-hmm.
It was just such a lovely little moment. I did think it was kind of weird. Well, not weird, but just an interesting choice to have Nancy call her instead of calling Carson. And so I wonder, I don't know. I guess I haven't watched a lot of the later episodes of just the Nancy episodes of the show. And so I don't really know how much of a starring role Nancy plays or Carson plays in relation to Bess.
Well, Bess is not in the first season.
Yeah, right.
So.
Right. That's what I mean. It's like, I don't know. Like maybe Bess is more of a main character than Carson at this point is what
I see what you mean.
Yeah. So maybe that's why. But I just thought it was interesting because she's supposed to be here because she's filling in for Carson, and it's just interesting to like make her call Bess. It's really interesting to make her call Bess even at all, or call anyone even at all, because it doesn't really play much of a role in the show. So it's definitely just supposed to be like a, hey, look, Nancy has another life here, kind of a moment, which is just feels a little bit like out of the blue. Like you don't do that at all afterwards. So why did you feel the need to do it there?
I felt like they were using it as an excuse to like have Bess explain like Nancy's character, that like, oh, this is so typical Nancy that she would just drop the phone and run off. And Bess even says she like puts the phone down. She's like, oh, Nancy only just arrived and she's already got a mystery.
That's right.
We're just explaining that Nancy does this all the time, actually. This is very characteristic of her to do. But it was such a quick scene. It didn't really feel important or necessary at all. Yeah. Which I'm not going to complain about a Bess appearance. That's always great. But
never.
It felt like it was just that, and that's all it needed to be. Mm-hmm. Could have been a little bit more, but oh well.
Yeah. I do wonder, I mean, is the decision to make this just a Hardy Boys television show instead of a Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew television show, is it because they had more viewership for just the Hardy Boys episodes? Or I don't know, like what the reasons were, or the reasons that they had, right, for doing this kind of thing. But like, it's sad. But I can see, how if that were the case, how they would need to input something like this to be like, if you don't watch the Nancy episodes, you should know, that she is a regular detective kind of character. So, yeah.
Callie goes away, I guess, by this point, if we're having the Frank and Nancy drama, romance, whatever.
I mean, I wouldn't put past this Frank to two-time on Callie with Nancy Drew, so.
Sadly, yeah. Oh, well.
Yeah. Oh, well, indeed. Could have been so good.
Could have.
Could have been so good.
Coulda, shoulda.
Oh, coulda, shoulda, woulda. I think another thing that frustrates me about this show outside of the sexism thing, and you're like, Becky, how, but one thing that does is that they play into that trope of like making everybody seem suspicious to the point where it doesn't make any freaking sense.
Yeah.
Like I think about the guy who they go into his hotel room and he shows them
Bronson.
Bronson.
Yeah.
That whole part where he like smiles after they leave, like he's like pulled one over on them. It's not true at all. It's just being a weird creep for no reason.
Yep.
The assistant manager even, he's sketched throughout the whole thing. And we get to the end and it's like, no, there's nothing going on with him.
He's just weird. That's all.
Yeah, he's just a weird guy. So like, I mean, like, I know that we have to have multiple suspects here, but I think there is a way to make people mysterious without making them like fully do things that don't make any sense. I think this happens a lot in the CW show too, or like other CW shows where in Pretty Little Liars, I think is like the most famous for doing it, is that they will make people seem so suspicious and they are doing something so weird, or like you never watched Pretty Little Liars, right?
I saw some of it, not all of it.
Well, the very first season they do this so much with this Toby. Do you remember Toby?
Yeah.
And he's not doing anything bad at all, but they always make him like give like these like menacing scowls, or it's just so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. But yeah. That is The Mystery of the Hollywood Phantom, Part 1 and Part 2, and Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, 1970s TV show. We hope you enjoyed us talking about it.
Yes.
Do you want to give a score?
Oh, no.
No.
Oh, it's so difficult.
Yeah, because I mean, it's got Francie in it.
Yeah.
It's a Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew thing. I don't know.
We love a crossover. I think it's just a 3 flashlight for me. It loses a lot because of the misogyny, but it gets a little point for just it being Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys and the Francie.
Gosh, it's tough, because they do such a good job of making these shows so exciting. They truly are enjoyable to watch. Like, even with all this stuff, as angry as I was glued, glued to the screen. Gotta see what happens next.
Yeah,
all the guest stars. I can only imagine in the 70s watching this TV show how hyped you would be.
Yeah.
Especially if you were a fan of like mysteries and mystery stories, you watched all these other detective shows too, probably. And so like seeing these people, it was probably such a trip.
Right.
And they clearly know what they're doing, with like making a TV show. So it's just, but I was so pissed and I'm so upset at what they have done to our girl Nancy. I have to give it like a 2.75.
Okay.
That's where I'm going to land. 2.75. You don't deserve a 3. You don't deserve to be called good, even though you do some things pretty well. I don't want to admit it. I was so mad. So you don't get a 3 from me. You get 2.75. And you better be grateful.
Yeah. I was waffling between a 2 and a 3, and my notes are just all complaints. It's like I wanted to like it so much more. I want to love this show, all of it, but I just can't for this one.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that makes me rate it so lowly too, is in addition to all of the complaints that I have about it, is such a letdown. It's just, I had such high expectations. I had such high hopes. And so when it's such a letdown, it's like, I can't handle it. What it could have been. Could have been.
Maybe the next one will be better.
Maybe so. Well, next up, regular Drews, we have something that is so exciting. I don't even know how to like start talking about it because I'm so excited about it.
Right. I can't believe we got our hands on this. This is amazing.
It's going to be a little bit of a different episode because it's not really something that you can watch because it's not available. But thanks to an anonymous, very lovely person, we happen to get our hands on the unreleased 2016 Drew pilot with Sarah Shahi.
Yes. We're going to be watching it. We're going to tell you all about everything that happens, our theories for what this show could have been, what it would have been.
I have so much to say about it
already. I know.
So I'm going to try to contain myself. Even for that episode. But yeah, no, I'm so pumped. I mean, so many people had so many thoughts about this show before, like as it was in production. So it's just, there's just so much to say and so much to talk about and so much to, I'm oh my God. So
I'm so excited.
That's coming next, regular Drews. Keep your ears peeled for that. It is going to be a fun time. And we'll give you the inside scoop on what that coulda, shoulda, woulda been. So yeah. Thank you very much for listening. And we will see you all next time.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Regular Nancy Drew. Email us at regularnancydrew@gmail.com.
If you like this episode, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe.
You can also follow us on Instagram at Regular Nancy Drew and Twitter at RegularND.
You can also support us on Patreon. Patrons at the $3 level vote on upcoming episode topics and get exclusive access to our Scoop Sesh series.
And all patrons receive early access to each episode as well as weekly bonus content.
And to all you regular Drews out there,
Thanks for listening.